Good Friday afternoon to you. Hope your weekend is off to a great start. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. Plenty of Browns and Cavs to talk about. Cavs continue to be the story of the NBA, one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. A little later in the show, Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan will be along. He will talk Browns and Cavs with us. We begin by talking Browns and Cavs with the D-Man Dennis Manoloff from WTAM News Radio 1100. So, D-Man, AFC playoffs, we're down to the final four, if you will. You look at the final four in the AFC, the Browns conference. There are a lot of really good quarterbacks. Mahomes, you've got Josh Allen, you've got Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. When I look at that, and let's start there. There's multiple facets to this. When you look at that, how's Baker stack up?
Is depressed too strong a word? Yeah. But frustrated and concerned? Yes. Color me frustrated and concerned. I mean, just watching the AFC Final Four, and you mentioned Joe Burrow and then Mahomes and Josh Allen, those three guys, you're going to have to beat them at some point, all right, presumably, to get where you want to go, which is the Super Bowl if you're the Cleveland Browns. And then, like you said, Lamar Jackson is also in the Browns division, the AFC North, along with Burrow. Justin Herbert is a 5,000-yard passer who is fantastic for the LA Chargers, and he almost got into the playoffs. Derek Carr, the guy, he and his team, the Raiders, kept the Chargers from getting into the playoffs in that final week of the regular season. Maybe Carr doesn't go to the NFC, so he stays in the AFC. It really is problematic when you look at the traffic for Baker Mayfield and the Browns, and really you can slice it up into two parts. One is the teams themselves that the Browns have to beat, and then the other part is Baker. When you watch, I mean, Dave, tell me, when you saw Joe Burrow play the past two postseason games, when you've seen Patrick Mahomes play and Josh Allen and Justin Herbert throw the ball, do you think that Baker's in that league? You know, and that's the scary part about it. And so, you know, it's 4 years in for Baker. Obviously last year, injured and ineffective, was pretty good in 2020, threw the ball all right in 18, but then fell off the cliff in 19. He's really overall been an average quarterback. And I need to get removed from these playoff games because right now I'm not seeing a Baker Mayfield who stacks up.
Well, the other thing that I've noticed in watching those guys, and you know, Tannehill equates roughly to what Baker Mayfield has done. He's had a better season than Baker. But when I look at it, D-Man, the thing that I'm seeing is the Browns just don't have playmakers that threaten the defense. You have Nick Chubb, and I'll give you him. Even Odell looks completely different in LA than he did here. I think watching him with the Rams makes me believe he was really disinterested in being a part of the Browns offense. He looks completely different. He's making those one-handed catches and showing off really good hands again, which, you know, he did not show here. Baker Mayfield needs to be better. But they have to upgrade the playmaking of the offense as a whole. You've got Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Other than that, you don't have anybody that scares me even a little. I mean, Jarvis Landry's serviceable, but he's not somebody that the defense is going, how are we going to stop him? Not a Hill, not a Chase, not an A.J. Brown, not a Stephon Diggs. That's what scares me and where I think the Browns need to look. Go get me a playmaker or two for Baker Mayfield if he's going to be the quarterback.
Yeah, first of all, the offense of the Cleveland Browns looks antiquated to me compared to the offenses we're seeing in the playoffs. And part of that is what you're saying, Dave. They don't have downfield threats to stretch the field and create that wide open passing game. And, you know, you're right about Odell. Odell's the closest thing that the Browns had to somebody who would make defensive coordinators and cornerbacks nervous on the other side. And Baker, and what happens to Odell Beckham Jr.? He forces his way out of town and signs with the Rams, and now he's one victory away from the Super Bowl. And you're absolutely right. He looks totally different. As far as how you slice up the blame pie with Beckham, I think there are multiple slices. I think definitely he's part of it because he quit on his team, essentially. But he also looked at it and said, I am not working in Kevin Stefanski's offense for whatever reasons, whether it be Stefanski not scheming me up or Baker not getting me the ball. But you look at the lack of productivity for Odell Beckham Jr. while Kevin Stefanski was the head coach the past 2 years, and it's really, stunning. And so, you have to look a little bit at Stefanski, a little bit at Baker, and a little bit at Odell, and now you've got Beckham looking like he did in New York playing for the Rams.
Yeah, and a lot of that has to go with, you've got Van Jefferson, who's speed, you've got Cooper Kupp, you've got Tyler Higbee. There are other weapons, so he's clearly the number 2 behind Cooper Kupp. But I get where you're going with that.
Dave, let me jump in quickly with one more point. Running-based attacks are antiquated. Okay, we can love Nick Chubb all we want. We can love Kareem Hunt all we want. They can be quality players and contributors to good teams and help you get to the playoffs. But in today's day, you have to be able to throw the ball to win in the playoffs.
Yeah, agreed wholeheartedly. And, go get some weapons so that whoever is playing quarterback can threaten the defense. All right, time to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one, strangely enough, about Baker Mayfield.
My name is Taylor, and my comment is about the quarterback position of the Cleveland Browns, more specifically Baker Mayfield. I have nothing against the man personally, but as the quarterback of my favorite football team, I am allowed to cast judgment on his play. And also the way the media, Cleveland personalities such as yourself, I'm not saying you've done this, are constantly making excuses for the man. Now, we need a receiver. Well, OBJ seems to be succeeding with the Rams. Last year, there was no talk about us needing a receiver, right? So when Jarvis leaves and has a great year, possibly Njoku leaves and has a great year, then who will the media look to blame next? There's always an excuse and a reason made for Baker Mayfield. Is it going to be Coach Stefanski, who is the reigning NFL Coach of the Year? Hey, I hope you address my voicemail. Thanks a lot, man. Take care.
And again, I appreciate all the voicemails that we get. We keep growing and getting them, and we will continue to use them. There's some truth to that. I mean, Baker Mayfield has to play better. But again, we've discussed Odell. Odell was not Odell with the mindset and the way he was being used. D-Man, it probably goes to what you're saying. This offense needs to figure out how to have more explosive plays in the passing game. I think that's what we're saying. We're dancing around it, but I think the bottom line is this offense needs to be more explosive passing the football.
Yeah, it's conceivable that Stefanski wanted to be more explosive, but he knew he couldn't do it with a sore arm Baker. It turns out his left arm, but an inaccurate Baker. But addressing the caller's voicemail, Truth and Reason, you are in the no excuses for Baker Mayfield zone. I mean, Dave Bacon and I have been consistent. We don't make excuses for Baker Mayfield. We explain stuff, but I've been willing to criticize Mayfield along the way. I don't sit there and bend over backwards to try to defend him. I'm not a Baker apologist by any stretch of the imagination. If he plays well, I celebrate it. I give him props. If he plays poorly, I don't. I criticize him. So, I do think that there are some people out there, in Baker's case, a decent number, that will defend him to the ends of the earth. No matter what they see in front of them, it's never Baker's fault. I think that's the wrong approach because Mayfield was part of the problem in 2021. And, the Browns this offseason, I think their best realistic bet is to bring Baker back as healthy as possible because I don't see any of the stud quarterbacks mentioned potentially coming through the door. The draft is pretty weak on the quarterback side of it. So I think the best bet is for Baker to come back healthy next year. But based on what I just said at the top of the show, I'm not feeling really good about it in the AFC.
Yeah, it's got to improve dramatically, and that offense just has to be more explosive. The D-Man, Dennis Manoloff from WTAM News Radio 1109. Gonna step aside, take a quick time out. We will continue talking Browns. Another voicemail of truth and reason straight ahead. Sports4CLE. Talking Browns when we return.
Life is getting back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for spring classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
We continue talking Browns with the D-Man, Dennis Manoloff from News Radio WTAM 1100. Time to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about an area of the team that the Browns need to improve moving forward.
Dave, another Browns offseason is here, and this past season hurt the worst. With such high expectation for possibly finally getting to the Super Bowl to being basically done after Game 14. So again, the uncertainty at the quarterback position still exists. Who will we draft in the first few rounds, and who will we look at in free agency? But I hope most of all, in the room where decisions are made, a huge emphasis is put finally on specialty teams. Look at the playoffs so far, where the games have been won with last-second field goals, where we, as Browns fans, are praying we can make the point after touchdown. And when was the last time we had a punt or kickoff return for more than 10 yards? The specialty teams is what gets the offense and defenses going, and a lot of times it's what wins games. So please, Browns management, let's address the issue.
And D-Man, I know we've talked about it ad nauseum. That's Ron Byer, frequent contributor, and you and I mentioned special teams a couple of times during the year. Now, the coverage team was pretty good. It ranked near the top. Other than that, return game wasn't good. Kicker wasn't good. I mean, punter wasn't good, although Colquitt was better. But, yeah, special teams needs to improve greatly because that's going to be the difference in close games very often.
Absolutely. It needs an overhaul, a cleanse, perhaps. I mean, you look at the playoffs. As you said, I mean, you've got the Packers, who all year had bad special teams. I mean, pretty much the entire season. Finished the season, I think, 30th or 31st in special teams rankings. Well, guess what? cost them dearly in the game against the 49ers and a chance to go to the NFC title game. Block punt turned into a touchdown. There's your difference. And I know Aaron Rodgers didn't play particularly well, but he could argue, hey, even with my substandard performance, we would have won if we could just have gotten a punt off or not had a kick blocked like we did at the end of the first half. And then you had 3 walk-off field goals in the divisional round. Evan McPherson had one of them. The Bengals kicker looks like, to borrow a nickname from another kicker, Greg Zuerlein, Greg the Leg, Legatron. He looks like Legatron. So the Browns are going to have to be dealing with Evan McPherson and Justin Tucker in the AFC North. So if you were getting upset about the quarterback problem in the AFC and maybe in the AFC North, you can go ahead and get upset about the kicker problem in the AFC North. And the Steelers presumably are going to bring back Chris Boswell, who's no joke. So it's absolutely right to call out the special teams of the Browns. They were repeatedly mistake-prone and often, slapstick. It was really, really bad, and it cost them, and they've got to do something about it from head to toe.
Yeah, I let that sink in. Packers had Aaron Rodgers, a guy that the Browns fans would love to have playing quarterback, and he's at home during championship weekend because of their special teams. That's all we have to say about the importance of special teams right there. All right, Greg Newsome and Demetric Felton, couple of the Browns rookies who played really well. Let's take a look at Instagram with Greg Newsome and Demetric Felton.
What would I do without your smart mouth? Drawing me in and you kicking me out. Got my head spinning, no kidding. I can't pin you down. What's going on in that?
That's why you're trying to call me?
So dizzy, don't know what hit me, but I'll be alright. It's underwater, but I'll be fine. You're crazy. I'm out of mind.
D-Man, I'll tell you, that is the confidence of a cornerback that you want to see. Just doesn't care, and he's going after it. So good for Greg Newsome.
That's 30 seconds of my life I can't have back. It's funny, and I'm just kidding, of course, about the 30 seconds. It's funny. Maybe Greg Newsome should sing to receivers to throw them off their game. I wonder if he'd get a flag for that. But honestly, as long as Greg Newsome plays well at cornerback and continues to grow and build off of his strong rookie season, I couldn't care less if he was Pavarotti or who knows what. But, good for him and good for that fun.
Yeah, he was outstanding. I mean, the best thing you can say about a rookie cornerback, teams did not go out of their way to throw at him. That'll show you how good he was. All right, Pro Football Focus. One free agent from each team that they cannot afford to lose. And for the Browns, they say it is David Njoku. You see the team grades and the player grades. Up and down journey from draft day 2017, unrestricted free agent season coming up after the 5th-year option. You see his receiving grade. You know what, D-Man, I don't think they use him enough. I think David Njoku has the ability to be a matchup problem and a weapon. And for whatever reason, I know he's inconsistent. He's dropped the ball a couple of times. That's concerning. But his size, his speed, his athleticism makes him a matchup problem.
Yeah, you hit on it, Dave. I will buy what PFF is selling. And by the way, if you better buy what PFF is selling because the Browns do, and they're highly respected and do a great job on all their grades and analysis and everything. I'll buy it in the Njoku case as long as what you just said. the Browns have to figure out a way to use him more, because you can afford to lose a guy who's underused, and honestly too, if Austin Hooper continues to disappoint and Harrison Bryant is just another guy, then yeah, Njoku's value goes up. But if you can somehow extract more, ability or more production out of Austin Hooper and Harrison Bryant, then you might not miss Njoku as much. But I like David Njoku. I always have since he came out of college. I'd like to see him stay with the Browns, but if he does, the Browns need to use him more.
The D-Man, Dennis Manoloff from WTAM News Radio 1100 and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. One more voicemail of Truth and Reason straight ahead. This one about some of the quarterbacks in the AFC North. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Life is getting back on track, and so is the job market. Be ready with the training you'll need to get a great job. If you or your family has experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with tuition assistance. Whether you want to improve your skills, get certified, or train for a new career, go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. Register now for online and on-campus classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns football with the D-Man, Dennis Manoloff, News Radio, WTAM 1100. You can listen to him tonight, 7 to 8:30, or 7 to 8 on WTAM right before the Cleveland State game. Time to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about quarterbacks in the AFC North.
Hello, this is Billy G. from Florida. Hallelujah, Big Ben is gone. He beat up on the Browns for, 18 years. Give or take. Now we got Joe Burrow. He's going to probably beat up on the Browns for another 12 or 15 years too. So, it's just one of those things. We just can't catch a break, I guess. Thanks a lot. Bye.
All right, D-Man, let's point out now, in fairness, Joe Burrow is currently 0-3 against the Browns. That will change, I guarantee it. But Ben Roethlisberger, the Browns passed on. Browns had no chance to go get Joe Burrow. So that's kind of luck of the draw in that one.
Yeah, it's hard to feel too sympathetic to the Browns' plight when just 4 years ago they had the number 1 overall pick and took Baker Mayfield, okay? I mean, it's not like they've been sitting at 25 in the draft the last 6, 7, 8 years and haven't been able to have their crack at a really good quarterback. They had the number 1 overall pick in a draft that, we have to remind people, not that they need reminding. Josh Allen went to the Bills. Lamar Jackson went to the Ravens. So, it's not like the Browns have been denied the opportunity to get a franchise type quarterback. It happened. The opportunity was there, at least in 18. As far as, Burrow, he struggled against the Browns so far. At least the Bengals have struggled against the Browns. That's a team that Baker has really played well against. But I'm not looking forward to, as a Browns fan, the return of Lamar Jackson to full health and, a fully loaded Bengals team next year. Not to mention what the Steelers might do. I mean, who knows? With that defense and some of the skill position players they have, maybe a quarterback drops into their lap, and now all of a sudden it's a big old pig pile again. But at the very least, you're going to have to deal with the Bengals because they're young and hungry and full of skill position players. And the Ravens have to be, better than they were this year. So it's going to be another tough road in the NFC North or AFC North.
Yeah. I would agree. You know, you mentioned Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson. Let's go back to that draft just real briefly. The pick that John Dorsey made was Baker Mayfield, and I get why he made that pick. That was the pick that had the highest floor. So in other words, number one pick overall, coming off of what they had, which was, 0-16, 1-15, whatever it was in those combined years, you could not mess up the first overall pick, and it was going to be a quarterback. Remember, Josh Allen had some questions about accuracy. Now, he's developed into a great quarterback. There was no way the Browns were going to take Lamar Jackson number one overall. That wasn't going to happen. Remember, the Ravens traded back into the first round to get him. They were probably the only people that had Lamar Jackson as a number one overall pick. And I remember saying repeatedly during that draft, there's going to be one of these guys that's a stud, there's going to be two of them that are okay, and there's going to be some busts. Well, it looks like the busts were Rosen, who a lot of Browns fans wanted the Browns to take, and Sam Darnold, who was right up there with Baker Mayfield. So Mayfield wasn't the worst. He certainly wasn't a home run, but he was I guess he was the safest pick, and I understand the thinking behind taking Baker Mayfield. He was the guy that you could get up higher, but you weren't going to go really low. Now, Josh Allen has turned out to be a really good quarterback.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm glad you brought up Sam Darnold and, for that matter, Josh Rosen, because certainly Darnold and, to a degree, Rosen were mentioned as candidates at number one overall, in addition to Josh Allen. Lamar Jackson was on nobody's radar, really, for a number one or a top five pick. So, yeah, there was a lot. I know a lot of people who thought that Sam Darnold would be a good choice, and he's turned out to be a bust, at least as of now. I mean, maybe he could rescue his career, but as of now, he looks like a bust. And Josh Rosen absolutely is a bust. So I get your point, Dave. It's just that when you step back and here you are in 2022, looking back at 18, you're going, oh man, wish it would have been Josh Allen, but at the time, you're right. Hindsight's 2020. At the time, Allen coming out of Wyoming, questions about his accuracy. The word raw was mentioned with him many, many times. And this, as you said, the Browns were not willing to invest in a project, as it were. They wanted the guy who was closer to being NFL ready, and that was, they thought, Baker.
All right, so the D-man, Dennis Manoloff, and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. On the other side of the break, we turn our attention to the Cavs, playing really well, getting a lot of praise. A lot of people think they will be a factor in the Eastern Conference. Currently just a couple games out of first place in the East. We're talking Cavs with the D-man when we return on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
We turn our attention to the Cleveland Cavaliers, 30 wins already on the year, 30-19, and really getting the attention finally of the NBA and the national folks. Take a listen to a former Cavalier, an NBA player, Kendrick Perkins, just on what he thinks the Cavs' ceiling is.
When you look at this Cavs team, I'm watching them. They have these twin towers, okay, and Allen and Mobley. And the way that they're protecting the basket It's something beautiful to watch. They might be the best defensive tandem for as bigs in the NBA. Mobley, he's winning Rookie of the Year. But then you have the setup guy in Garland. Look, Garland is a phenomenal talent. Something about Garland says superstar written all over it, okay? He's going to be a first-time All-Star. Then you have a bench, and they have wings, okay? They have wings, athletic wings. When you talk about that they drafted, Forza Kuro, Cedi Osman, those guys to that nature. And then they have a Coach of the Year candidate. But when I look at the Cleveland Cavaliers, hear me out, in the Eastern Conference, their ceiling is the conference finals. No team in the East want to see them in the first or the second round. I'm saying it here right now.
And D-Man, Kendrick Perkins is a guy that'll let you know exactly how he feels. He knows what he's talking about. That's the guy. He appreciates the bigs because that's where he made his living. A lot of truth to what he said.
Love Perk. I mean, the Cavs, Dave, at the beginning of the NBA season, did you have the Cavs 30-19 as of January 28th? I sure didn't. I was wondering how they were going to stop anybody. For example, just after the first 2 games of this season, they gave up 255 points and were 0-2. And I'm going, oh boy, okay, is this season 4 of the rebuild? But 3-game winning streak after that 2-game losing streak to open. They started to play defense, and guys have accepted their roles, and everybody's taken off. And the Cavaliers are absolutely the feel-good story of the NBA. Right there with them is the Memphis Grizzlies. And, I'm sure in Memphis they would say, well, they are. But to me, it's Cavs first, Grizzlies second. Some people would say Grizzlies first, Cavs second. And interesting how those two franchises have risen to prominence. Yes, the Grizzlies have more of a pronounced star in Ja Morant, but behind Morant, it's not like there's a big 2 or a big 3 or anything like that. They're an analytics-driven organization. A lot of analytics goes into how they defend people. The Cavaliers do the same thing. I mean, you saw the other night when the Cavs hammered the Milwaukee Bucks, when the Bucks had their big 3 of Giannis and Middleton and Holiday. The Cavaliers' defense was really, really good against those big 3, and they didn't allow them to take over the game at any point. So the Cavs are terrific. I don't know what their ceiling is. I hope that Kobe Altman, and I'm sure he will continue to look to improve, because this team has some improving to do. You'd like to add some scoring on the wing for sure, but the fact that this franchise has gone from moribund the first 3 seasons post LeBron 2.0 to 30-19 and 3rd in the East as of our taping, 1.5 out of first in the 4th season is nothing short of remarkable.
The other thing to keep in mind, Darius Garland, guy that played 1 season, 5 college games, has been banged up in the first couple of years. Evan Mobley only played 1 college season at USC, and he's been outstanding. What I'm saying is these are young guys that haven't played a lot of higher level basketball, and they're doing what they're doing now. Once they get a little bit of seasoning and a feel for what's going on, you're seeing it with Garland. You're going to see the same thing with Mobley. They have 2 potential big-time superstars because of how young they are. These guys are just going to keep getting better. That's what Perkins was getting at with Darius Garland.
That's true. With the Cavs, they don't have the established big 2 or big 3 yet. But to your point, it's very possible that Garland and Mobley grow into that, and Jarrett Allen is just a cut below Evan Mobley, because Jarrett Allen is not exactly a grizzled veteran. He's in his mid-20s. I think he's like 24, maybe 25 at the oldest. So Jarrett Allen has a long career ahead of him. And, it's just so much fun to watch these guys, too, because it's a team-oriented deal. You don't see any stat hunters out there. Even the best players on this team are not out for numbers. All they want to do is win. And, they'll do what it takes to win. If it means scoring 30 for Garland, okay, fine. If it means 18 rebounds for Allen and just 9 points, fine. If it means 5 blocks for Mobley and only 12 shots, fine. They just all are together they're on the exact same page, and they're led by JB Bickerstaff, who's done a masterful job with everything relating to this team. And he's the perfect guy to guide them, not only through this, contention status, but all the way, in my mind, to the NBA Finals.
The thing that impresses me when I watch them,
in coming year,
doesn't matter what's going on with them, they just keep playing. And for a young team, there are times when they're not playing well. They don't hang their heads. They figure out, all right, this is what is working tonight. They seem to have that unique ability. And as you mentioned, they're all young. So the fact that they can go to, all right, this isn't working, let's go here. The fact that they keep doing that and keep working it, that's a sign of a really good team that is really well coached.
Absolutely, David. And you go back to the Milwaukee game. First quarter, the Bucks come out in Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. To me, they wanted to send a message. I mean, they'll never acknowledge it publicly because they're the defending champs, and they wouldn't want to stoop so low as to acknowledge this. But I think they wanted to send a message to the Cavs that, hey, you guys are up and coming, you're plucky, and you got a good record, but we're coming in here as the defending champs. We've got Giannis, we've got Middleton, we've got Holiday, we have, for that matter, Portis. We're going to take it to you tonight, and we're going to teach you a lesson. And they got out of the gates great. The Bucks were hitting threes, and they were up double digits, and it looked like, oh, boy. Well, like you said, Dave, the Cavs are like, we'll take the shot, we'll absorb the blows, and then we will settle in, and we will climb back into this. And not only did they climb back into it, but by halftime, they had control of the game. And then third quarter, they pulled away, and fourth quarter was just window dressing. But when you looked at the final box score of that game, Dave, 11 three-pointers from 2 bench guys, Cedi Osman and Kevin Love. Cedi had 6 when in his previous 5 games he had a grand total of 1. Kevin Love had 5, and one other guy off the bench, it might have been Rondo, had 1. So the Cavaliers bench destroyed the Bucks bench, and part of the way they did it, a large part of the way they did it, was 12 threes. So if you're not going to beat, I mean, if you're the Cavs, you might beat the opposition with Garland, Mobley, and Allen going off all at the same time. You might beat them with Kevin Love and Cedi Osman off the bench. You might beat them with 8 guys scoring in double digits. They have so many different ways to beat you, not just offensively, but defensively, because they have the height and the versatility and the athleticism. You don't just have the height on defense with a bunch of plotters. You have height and athleticism, guys who can close out on three-point shooters within a half a second of being in the key. So they can beat you offensively and defensively in multiple ways.
All right, let's take a look at this. This is from The Ringer. It's about Darius Garland, and the title of it, Darius Garland is pretty damn special. And what they do is they take a look at the growth, and it's before Colin Sexton's injury and after, and then before Ricky Rubio's injury and after. So basically what this shows you, Colin Sexton was missed, Ricky Rubio was missed, but Darius Garland is able to kind of morph and adapt his game to continue winning. And again, that's one of the reasons that everybody is talking about this guy as not only an all-star, but a guy that is an ascending young player who's going to have elite status in the NBA for a long time.
There's no question about it. I mean, you hope that the back problems that he's experiencing now are going to be a thing of the past soon enough. I shudder when I see him grasping at his back like he did against Milwaukee, because unfortunately that's one place where I can relate to Garland is the back. So as long as Darius Garland can manage the back or overcome it, yeah, he's trending toward star status in this league. We saw it post Sexton. We saw him trying to, work with Sexton and doing, a good job as best he could. There was never any animus or anything. But, you could see where he wanted this. He was trying to spread his wings. It was hard to do with Sexton. And then when this season started, you had Sexton, Garland, and Rubio, and you're like, okay, are those minutes going to get chopped up? Well, it's worked itself out. And now clearly Darius Garland runs the show, and he's such a savant. He's such a basketball IQ guy. You can just see how he probes and prods and figures out who's where. He works the angles. He's constantly reading the other team's defense to figure out where he has to go with the ball. He's added shots to his repertoire. When he started out, it was the layup high off the glass and the floater in the lane, lots of floaters, scoop shots. Now he's giving you, jump shots, and he's taking it to the three-point line. So Darius Garland, it's just been a real joy to watch, and it would stun me if he's not an all-star this year. I'm almost positive he will be an all-star reserve, and he should be an all-star for years and years.
The D-Man, Dennis Manoloff from News Radio, WTAM 1100. D-Man, I know you got an air shift. Tell us about it tonight. What's on after you coming up?
Yeah, 7 to 8:30 tonight in advance, a regular show for me, but kind of a sugar show because we're making room for Cleveland State basketball. So, and it's cool to have Cleveland State basketball on WTAM 1100, 106.9 FM, the Red Hot Vikings under Coach Dennis Gates. So I'll be on 7 to 8:30 tonight.
All right, listen to him. He's the D-Man, Dennis Manoloff, News Radio, WTAM News Radio 1100. D-Man, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dave.
All right, the D-Man. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit of Browns and some Cavs with Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Life is getting back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for spring classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
We're going to shift our attention back to the Browns. Time to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski.
I have a question. Is Stefanski a rigid coach or is he a flexible coach? Because we've all been taught that rigid coaches, they have their system, and you have to fit in, or the other higher coaching way of coaching is flexible. You have people, and they fit their offense and their defense around the people they have, especially offenses. So that's my question: is he a rigid coach or is he a flexible coach?
All right, let's welcome in Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan. And Mac, everybody has a system. Kevin Stefanski was hired because of the offensive system he runs. Now, the system needs to be tweaked towards the personnel. So we'll see if he is able to do that. Rigid, flexible, I don't know that you can really define a coach. Players on offense, playmakers, guys that are explosive, make coaches look good. It's just the way it always is.
Yeah, Dave, you're spot on, and thank you for having me on. But, I would say this when it comes to Kevin Stefanski, you hear coaches every single year, we're going to put out our best personnel. We're going to make sure that we're playing our best players. And, with the Browns in the first year, you saw that kind of creativity from Kevin Stefanski, whether it be the end arounds with, Odell, or you had the passes from Jarvis Landry. You saw that flexibility and you saw that creativity when it came to that. However, you got to take a look at the rest of that offense. And you look at this season, you didn't see too many new wrinkles kind of added in. And so, I wonder when it comes to the rigid versus flexible question that the caller was asking, I think it's a fair one, to be honest. I think that you look at what Kevin Stefanski has done and what they preach. And at the same time, you see this same kind of consistent offense where, the Browns utilize 3 tight ends more than anybody in the league. You look at the fact that their running game, that's what they lean on heavily, contrary to, most teams in the NFL. And so, I wonder how much of that is going to be Stefanski's system set in stone versus, how much creativity and how much flexibility he offers for that offense. I'm not entirely sure exactly which way that he leans, but at the same time, I do think it's a fair question to ask.
Yeah, without question. All right, so Jarvis Landry, a guy that's due right around $15 million this year. Wouldn't be a huge cap hit. I think it's only like 1.5 or something along those if they get rid of it, if they release him before. I think it's in June. So I think that there's a cap hit after June, but not before. Do you think Jarvis Landry is back with the Browns this year?
Dave, I mean, that's the $1 million question when it comes to, looking at that Browns receivers room, because, they really, based on what we saw last year, you really need an overhaul. You need some new faces in there and some new wrinkles at that point, too. I mentioned it with the offense. But, when it comes to Jarvis Landry, the way that he's been able to, affect the team, I think that there's a possibility, obviously, that he's back. And I'll say this, it's not going to be at that $15 million number. I think that if he is going to be back, it's going to, have to be a extension / restructuring where they go ahead, they maybe sign him for another 2 more seasons. But that number goes from $15 million, maybe down to like $10 million. And that's the question is, does Jarvis Landry want to take that, at this point in his career? He's had productive seasons in the past. And at that point, you have to wonder at that point, does he accept that? And so that's where, I have questions with if he's going to be back or not. I would love to see him back in Cleveland. I would. And I know there's certain people that are saying, save the cap money, whatever. I think that for him in that locker room, I think that's too valuable. And I think that at that point, with what happened and what transpired last year, I do think that him being back would be a tremendous help to you. Because I think that he could kind of fill that Adam Thielen type of a role. But at the same time, if he does get released, it also would not shock me at all. Again, just given the circumstances of everything, it really wouldn't shock me though. But if I had to give a percentage on it, I would probably say, to be honest, I would probably say about like 40% that he's back in Cleveland. I would do it, but I also think that there's a reasonable shot that they decide, hey, you know what, let's just go ahead and cut ties here at this point.
Well, and he might not want the contract restructure. That might be the most likely outcome. The reason that becomes important is because I don't think you can strictly rely on the draft. I mean, look at, for every Jamar Chase or, fill in the blank rookie who's played really well, there's 2 or 3 first-round picks that take time to develop. The Browns don't really have time to develop a number 1 receiver. They got to go out and get one. And that's going to cost, 15, 17, $18 million. So let's look at some of the free agent wide receivers, assuming you could get, and obviously every time I see this, we kind of say, well, Odell Beckham Jr. ain't coming back and Devontae Adams probably isn't coming back. But say Chris Godwin's healthy. Would you give him $18 million for a year for 4 or 5 years? And if Jarvis, in fact, is gone, it's what? You got to pay an extra $3 or $4 million a year?
Right.
That's the way you got to look at it.
You know what? I would love Godwin. And I would say this, too, because he's that perfect kind of blend that Andrew Berry loves to look at. And that's the age, it's the production, and on top of that, it's the fit in the offense. And, I think that he's somebody who can be that number one for you. Another guy that I really like on that list, and, it's somebody that I've wanted to have in Cleveland for quite some time. And not just because of his last name, but Allen Robinson. I love Allen Robinson, and please, God, give him a something better than a mediocre quarterback, please, because you look at his history between Christian Hackenberg in college, then Blake Bortles, then he had Mitch Trubisky, Nick Foles, finally got a decent quarterback in Justin Fields this year, but he's a rookie, so he takes time. So I would love to see him in Cleveland. And one under the radar name that I actually really like and was looking at before he got hurt as well was Michael Gallup. And I really love what he's able to do in Dallas. And if the Browns were able to bring him in, he's somebody that I really like as well as that guy who can be that deep threat option. So, I look at those guys to possibly bring in. But like you said, with the Davante Adams side of it, Davante Adams, in my opinion, he's either franchise tagged and going back to Green Bay, or he could be going to someplace like Denver or Vegas. I don't know. But I don't think it's here in Cleveland. But Chris Godwin would be that interesting type of player. I just think that when it comes to the injuries, I don't know. And on top of that, too, I also don't know what's going to happen with Tom Brady. And so if Tom Brady comes back, it wouldn't shock me if he just takes a one-year deal in Tampa and then say, let's just go ahead and run it back and see what we can do. So if the Browns were able to bring in Chris Godwin, I'm going to be over the moon. Because, Dave, I'm with you. I don't think that it's just the draft that you can assess this position because, hell, look at the 2020 draft. The Philadelphia Eagles, after being leapfrogged by the Dallas Cowboys for CeeDee Lamb, they end up getting Jalen Reagor, and then the following pick is Justin Jefferson. So, they get stuck with the one out of the three. So, I don't think it's an exact science, and I think that there's a lot of talented guys in this draft. But at the same time, I do think that, you have to address this in multiple ways. And I think that Andrew Berry has shown the last two seasons that he'll at least get you an option or two in free agency that can handle the load. And if they can get a wide receiver, I do think that they can bring one in the drafts. But I would say they at least bring in one guy in free agency.
Yeah, the thing that you have to look at is they really need to upgrade the wide receiver position. Now, I know Jarvis wasn't healthy. He's playing on 1.5 legs with the MCL injury. But Baker Mayfield's 5th season, you have to give him weapons. And your quarterback, Baker Mayfield, is the kind of guy that's going to bitch or whoever it is. You don't have time to watch a number one receiver, rookie wide receiver develop. You just don't. They have to be ready to go, and they have to be threatening defenses day one.
Yeah, no, and you're spot on. And that's why, again, I think that it takes at least bringing in one of these veteran threats. And on top of that, too, if you bring in one of these guys, they can go ahead, they can mentor one of these guys coming out. They can mentor, a Treylon Burks, or they can mentor, a Garrett Wilson or one of these guys as well. And, even, too, it wouldn't shock me if they double dip in the draft as well, where, you might have somebody early on, but then you also can get somebody like John Mechie from Alabama a little bit later on as well, who's also, dealing with an injury. But that's also why, again, it comes down to the right receiver too. And this is where, I kind of lean on what happened with the Cavs so far this year. It's not about getting the most talented player. It's about getting the right fit for your team. And that's where, I think that the Browns need to really hone in on this offseason is getting the right fit, not only on the field, but also off the field. And so that's where I look at somebody like Allen Robinson, who has that kind of talent and is still young enough to where he can give you that production. So I think that he's somebody I would love to see them bring in. And even, like I said, a Michael Gallup, or hell, even a Russell Gage, who's somebody who, towards the end of last season, really performed well for Atlanta. And I think could be somebody who could be an under the radar free agent.
Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we turn our attention to the Cavaliers. 30-19, chasing the top spot in the Eastern Conference. Just a couple games back. Sports for CLE. Talking Cavs when we return.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery, partners in education, where stars shine.
Cavs are 30-19, battling for the top spot in the Eastern Conference. Trade deadline under 2 weeks away, 2 weeks from yesterday. JB Bickerstaff talked about just how good the chemistry is and being aware of that with a potential trade.
We've had a lot of conversations about that. We know how fragile chemistry is and how quickly it can be bothered, so this is a very important time for our team, an opportunity if they're there to improve itself, but also an opportunity, to not feel rushed to do something that could impact, the chemistry that we've built. So our front office, has a heavy understanding of how important that is. And again, they are aggressive to help improve this team. They do a lot of homework and understanding the type of people that you're going to bring in if you do decide to make a move. But understanding that we do have something good brewing here with the group that we have, and how do we complement it, if anything, but definitely not want to do something that negatively impacts it.
And Mac, everybody's in a hurry for the Cavs to add some scoring, but that is the wise thing to do, is make sure it's the right fit.
Yeah, and like I said last segment, I think that for the Cavaliers, it's about finding the right piece. And that's the one thing that I think, Kobe Altman and company have really done a good job of learning from, in the past where, they went out a couple years ago at the trade deadline. All of a sudden, last second, Andre Drummond comes to Cleveland. And you end up seeing, very talented player, but at the same time, a little bit of behind-the-scenes issues when it comes to Drummond. And so, you end up seeing him get bought out last season, and the ramifications that kind of came from that. So, I think that what Kobe Altman and company are going to be doing is, again, it's going to be, looking to add and looking to bring in a talented player. However, I do think that when it comes down to it, this team is going to be looking for the right fit more than anything. And that's where, I look at somebody, like a Dennis Schroeder in Boston, who's been, floated to Cleveland. I just don't know if that's the best kind of fit for this locker room. Mainly because of the fact that, again, you saw the reports from last offseason. He was expecting to get over $100 million. He's looking for his payday. So at that point, I don't necessarily know if that's a guy who I want to bring in if he's still looking for that next payday. Because, you look at a lot of these guys that are on the roster already, and those guys are the ones that are making that extra pass, that, are accepting of their roles. And to be honest, I would look at another player on Boston, Josh Richardson. He's somebody who plays very good on defense. He shoots the ball well from beyond the arc, but is also a veteran who is just out there to try to win. And so at that point, it's about accepting his role and making sure that he's bought into what the team has. So at that point, it's the right kind of veteran instead of, maybe going above and beyond to try to get that extra talent who might not necessarily be the best fit for this team.
All right, Brian Windhorst on how the Cavs could potentially use the Ricky Rubio hardship exemption that they got at the upcoming trade deadline. So they get, it's about $8+ million that they can use to absorb salary without making it match. But here's Brian Windhorst on what they might be doing with that.
Today, they were granted a $9 million disabled player exception by the league for the Ricky Rubio season-ending ACL. They can use that to trade for a player with 1 year left on his contract. League executives believe a main target for that will be Dennis Schroeder, who fits into that trade exception. Such a trade would potentially take the Celtics below the luxury tax, and he could help them on the perimeter. But from what I believe and what I hear, I think the Cavs are going to look for multiple deals at the deadline, including targeting Eric Gordon. They've already had some discussions with the Rockets. The Rockets have told the league that they want a first-round pick for Eric Gordon. The Cavs have Ricky Rubio, who they could trade for him. And they also have 3 picks in this draft, 2 high second-round picks and potentially, a late first-round pick, depending on their record. I could see them haggling it out with the Rockets towards the deadline. I wouldn't be surprised if they're able to add 2 players between now and February 10th.
And there you have it, Mac. I think multiple players is possible. Schroeder, yeah, I'm not sure. If Brian Windhorst says that they're targeting him, they probably are, because his sources are pretty good. But I don't think they're trading Colin Sexton, and I don't think they're trading Isaac Okoro unless they get overwhelmed with a really, really young piece that they feel fits moving forward.
Yeah, and Dave, I completely agree with you there, because I look at, you know, the pieces that they have available, and it's not just the Rubio exception that they have. People forget about, you know, last year they traded away JaVale McGee over to the Suns, I believe, or no, to the Nuggets, excuse me. There we go. $4.1 million for a trade exception. So they could fit a player into that as well. But with that Rubio deal, again, they had to fit a player that's an expiring deal. Some of the names that I looked at yesterday, and some of the names that I've heard as well, Kendrick Nunn from the LA Lakers could be a possibility depending on what goes down at the deadline there. The other one, too, that, you know, I personally have looked at, I haven't heard anything regarding it, but, you know, I think he could be a solid fit from a veteran standpoint. But Lou Williams down in Atlanta, you know, I think that he's somebody who's an expiring deal, $5 million. I think he could add that scoring pop that you want. But, you know, you also look at towards the end of the bench, you know, I look at somebody like a Kevin Pangos possibly, or, you know, a Dylan Windler, both, you know, playing well. Pangos playing sparing minutes, but playing a little bit with the charge. But Windler playing, you know, a lot more minutes recently, playing well. And, you know, former first-round pick, I think he could be somebody who could get moved as well. And, you know, again, I think that it comes down to, you know, them adding in those right pieces. I think that you could add somebody who's a solid depth option, you know, when it comes to that Rubio trade exception. But the key to remember here is that Rubio trade exception, they can go, or that Rubio disabled player exception, they can utilize that first, and then they can deal Rubio. So I think that you'll see two separate deals, one using that exception from Rubio first, then seeing the bigger move regarding Rubio's expiring contract by the deadline at that point.
Mac Robinson from 92.3 The Fan. Mac, as always, man, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Of course, Dave. Always appreciate the time, and thank you for having me on.
All right, Mac Robinson, you can listen to him on 92.3 The Fan. That's going to do it for this edition for Sports4CLE. We will see you again Monday at 4 o'clock. Scheduled guest Scott Petrek, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, as well as brownzone.com. That's Monday at 4. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you Monday.